Good evening. Tonight's discussion is entitled Washington's Farewell Address, the Final Federalist Paper. An analysis of George Washington's farewell address reveals that he was influenced by Federalist ideas to advance a strong federal government in which states yield authority to maintain liberties apart from despotism. George Washington's farewell address highlights three sentiments, which are unity of government, avoiding the spirit of party, and foreign policy. He addresses some of these sentiments throughout his political life. In the circular letter to the governors of each state on June the 8th, 1783, he makes reference to four pillars on which the fabric of our independency and national character must be supported, including the union of states under one federal head and the adoption of a proper peace establishment. In his farewell address to the Continental Army on November the 2nd, 1783, he states that without a federal government, everything must rapidly tend to anarchy and confusion. In his inaugural address of 1789, he recognizes the opportunities of tranquility and unanimity on a form of government for the security of the Union and for the advancement of the pursuit of happiness, which is the success of government. From authorship, which began in 1792 at the beginning of his second term, to the final draft printed in David Claypool's American Daily Advertiser, Federalist ideas were infused in the address to support Washington's ongoing sentiments. These Federalist ideas include a strong federal government, tariffs and taxes supporting manufacturing, and neutrality in foreign affairs. To begin this research, it is an obvious necessity to read Washington's farewell address and to examine other primary documents that promote the same ideas in the address, such as the circular letter to each of the governors of the state, farewell address to the Continental Army, and the inaugural address of 1789. Many have written and evaluated Washington's address. Jeffrey Melanson described the authorship of the text as sacred. Matthew Spalding considers it one of the great documents of our American history and major contribution to our political thought. Samuel Flagg Bemis writes about the address, as of Washington were the trunk and branches of the sturdy tree, then the shimmering foliage dancing and shining in the sunlight was that of Hamilton's. Let's begin with authorship. It has been a point of reference that Washington's farewell address was the last Federalist paper. The writers of the Federalist Papers were Alexander Hamilton, James Madison, and John Jay, all of whom contributed to the writing of the farewell address. The Federalist Papers were written in order to help the ratification and adoption of the U.S. Constitution by the states. They promoted such ideas as large commercial republic and no need for a Bill of Rights or judicial review. In 1792, George Washington wanted to retire from political life and to retreat to his home at Mount Vernon. He asked James Madison to assist him in writing a valedictory speech. He sent Madison the sentiments for his ideas he wanted to use for the speech. In the political background, factions were forming under the Federalist and Democratic Republicans. Alexander Hamilton, a Federalist leader, and Thomas Jefferson, the Democratic Republican, were advisors to Washington. Due to the inability of the factions to reach a resolution, Washington was urged to run for a second term and put his plans of retirement on hold. Madison had written a speech from Washington which was described by George S. Mott as more personal than political, focusing more on Washington's future than on the nation's. In 1796, Washington again decided to retire from office. This time he asked his chief aide, Alexander Hamilton, to assist him in writing a farewell address. According to the Lehrman Institute, Hamilton was known for his speed and felicity of pen. In a series of letters, Washington gave Hamilton his sentiments, Madison's draft of the valedictory speech, and his own draft based on Madison's. Hamilton composed a lengthy address in which Washington made changes, including shortening it, and later published in the American Daily Advertiser. The primary objectives Washington wanted to communicate in his address were his retirement from politics, American unity, freedom from the spirit of party, and foreign policy. Before Washington states his objectives, he declares that his qualities as president and as a man are given to fallible judgment. Romans 3:10 tells us, "There is none righteous, no, not one." And Romans 3:23 said, "For all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God." He thanks the people for their honors, support, and opportunities. In his first objective, he states, "The unity of government, which constitutes you one people, is also now dear to you. It is justly so, for it is the main pillar in the edifice of your real independence." Unity of government is a palladium of our liberties. 1 Corinthians 1:10, "I appeal to you, brothers, by the name of the Lord Jesus Christ, that all of you agree and that there be no divisions among you, that you may be united in the same mind and in the same judgment." In order for self-government to work, states must respect the constitutional authority of the federal government and comply with the laws that they institute. The second objective was avoiding the spirit of party. It is here that many historians have shared the thought that Washington was very much influenced by Federalist ideas. Again, emerging onto the political scene in 1792, when the farewell address was being composed for the first time, the Federalist and Democratic Republicans were at odds over the powers extended to the federal government, industry, and the formation of a national bank. In his farewell address to the Army, he states that unless the powers of the Union are increased, the honor, dignity, and justice of the nation would be lost forever. He warned that political factions will agitate communities, come with a spirit of revenge, and open the door to foreign policy and corruption. Micah 6:8 says, "He has shown you, O man, what is good. And what does the Lord require of you, but to act justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God?" The final objective was directed at foreign policy. Observe good faith and justice towards all nations. Cultivate peace and harmony with all. Religion and morality enjoin this conduct. Psalm 37:37 and 38. Consider the blameless, and observe the upright. A future waits for those who seek peace. But all sinners will be destroyed, and there will be no future for the wicked. Alexander de Caen explains that foreign policy was not unique to Hamilton and Washington, but that of Federalist ideas. This policy is one of the most highly debatable issues regarding the address. Was Washington promoting isolationism, or was he promoting trade free of alliances? Federalist and Democratic Republicans both agreed that America should remain neutral and free of alliances, although they debated of what country should be favored in that trade. Federalists wanted to favor England, and the Democratic Republicans wanted to favor France. So what was going on in the background while Washington composed his sentiment regarding foreign policy? He states that he feels he was guided by the principles set forth by the Proclamation of Neutrality in 1793. In 1793, Great Britain and longtime rival France were looking for assistance from the United States. The Democratic Republicans wanted to support the French during the Revolution, as they had come to the aid of the United States in their independence from Britain, and they gave financial contributions even after the war. The Federalists wanted to trade with Great Britain. Bemis states that the immediate purpose of the address was to strike a powerful blow against the French intermeddling in American affairs. Washington did not want the country tied up in alliances which would threaten the liberties of newly formed government. His motive was to settle and mature as a nation without interruption. To Martin Manning, the farewell address was a classic statement of Federalist doctrine that reflected the emerging issues of the American political landscape in 1796. Romans 16:16 through 17. "I appeal to you, brothers, to watch out for those who cause divisions and create obstacles contrary to the doctrine that you have been taught. Avoid them, for such persons do not serve the Lord, but their own appetites, and by smooth talk and flattery they deceive the hearts of the naive." So we return to the theme of the research. Was the farewell address the last Federalist paper? It has been acknowledged that the address was written under the influence of men who held Federalist views. Washington did not join any political factions that were emerging, although he did support the Constitution as the supreme law of the land. Washington acknowledges that not all of his decisions have been the correct one, but they have been choices made with good intentions for the nation. He drew upon his experiences. He fought for the glorious cause, which was the defense of American liberties. Through all his experiences and observations, he offered one last message to the nation he helped fight for, form, and led into a new era free from control of a tyrannical government. Thank you.